Okay, welcome guys. In this presentation, we're going to talk about how to manage the dual player. Now, this is probably one of the more frequent questions that I get when it coming from coaches is how to handle the guy who is playing a position and also pitches for you. How do you make sure that he is getting enough pitching work in to maintain effectiveness and to be good in the game? And it seems like a lot of times the guy who is it seems like a lot of times the guy that we're talking about is the starting shortstop who's also a pitcher. In a sense where he's starting pitcher, starting shortstop, one of the better athletes. But I see this a lot at all levels, not as much on the college level. Maybe in junior college some, but occasionally you'll see it. But predominantly this is going to be at the younger levels, high school and youth league. And it's usually also not just one guy. But anyways, in this presentation, we're going to talk about how to manage them, how to deal with them, how to make sure that they're getting in everything that they need. So it's probably one of the top questions I get from pitching coaches. Here's the number one rule. Okay, if there's nothing else that you figure out or learn this. The number one rule is that pitching responsibilities for the day always come first before anything else. So before any defense, before any hitting, before anything else. If you're doing some team stuff, base running and whatnot, or warming up, that's fine. But the point is that before you start doing some of the other stuff where they're just shagging balls or they're taking their ground balls, or it's BP time and they're hitting, their pitching has to get done first. Because in my experience, what I've learned is that if you wait to do the pitching at the end of practice or after all of this, they'll never get to it. It seems that the pitching just kind of always gets pushed to the side because for a lot of those guys, they'd rather go catch fly balls. They'd rather make defensive plays and catching ground balls. They'd rather they'd rather hit than they would to get off the mound. So the first rule and probably maybe one of the only rules, but for sure the most important rule is that whatever they have that day to do. And if you'll refer to the pitching rotation chart, the management chart, then you'll know what day that somebody is on. Whatever their responsibilities are for that day, they always got to get those done early and, if nothing else, first in their practice that day before they get anything else done. Okay? Now, I want you to understand, this is somebody who is throwing a lot. They're throwing a lot from their position. They're also throwing a lot from when they're pitching. So it is okay to scale back on the effort level of a bullpen. It's not necessary for a dual player to get on the bullpen and throw as hard as they can. You'd rather do that anyways, but if you're wanting the effort level to be about 80-85%, if they can do it, great. But if they can't, if they're just not feeling up to it that particular day, it's okay. Getting some work in at a lesser level, but still being quality, is still far better than trying to force the issue and making the effort level higher, and it's not nearly as productive in the bullpen. It is also okay to scale back on the amount of pitches that they're throwing in the bullpen as well. So if typically the bullpen for a guy, maybe 30 to 35 pitches, it's totally okay for a dual player to maybe throw 20 to 25 pitches. If he's a bullpen guy, if he's just a reliever and not a starter, then it's definitely okay for them to be throwing less pitches. But just remember, they're also throwing a lot of pitches from their position, especially if they're middle infielder, let's say. A big part of their job is to be able to still make accurate throws. So that whole issue in terms of hitting spots and being athletic will still benefit you and carry over to what you're doing on the mound. Okay, it is far more common and expected that the dual player will suffer from fatigue, soreness, and an overall lack of strength. I think that the important part is that you as a coach need to be understanding of that. Now, this isn't an absolute, and it's not guaranteed that just because they play another position that this is going to be the case. But I want you to understand that it's possible and it's more likely with them, and that from time to time, at least, that they may be on a particular day where they just show up and they just don't have, they're not 100%. They don't have everything for them. As long as you understand that, they're going to feel more comfortable in doing what they're going to do because they don't want to disappoint you. They don't want to feel like they're letting you down, and they don't want you to think that you're angry at them. So if you can communicate that with them, letting them know that it's okay, that it's expected, it's understandable that they may not be 100% all the time, but that doesn't mean that we still won't get some quality work in, but we'll just do what we can do. Then that's the important part. My good buddy Alan Jaeger, he's got a great saying that I love and say all the time. Is he says to listen to your arm, and basically what that means is that from a day-to-day basis, your arm, your body, will tell you how it feels and what it's capable of that particular day, and that's where you can take it. And you don't want to try to force it and go beyond that because you're setting yourself up for a whole lot of problems and issues. But if you, and he always uses the example of long toss, and I'll use this. But if you've got a dual player who can throw long toss 300 feet, that's his average distance that he goes. And he comes out today and he starts to throw and he gets to 200 feet and he's already really starting to feel like he's got to try really hard to get out there. Now he knows that he normally goes to 300 feet, but today at about 200 feet, this feels like he's already kind of hitting his max right there. What does he do? Does he still go to 300 feet? No, he doesn't. He listens to his arm and he stops at about 200 or 220, wherever, right in that area, because that's what his arm is telling him he can do that day. Now, on the flip side, let's say that he's feeling amazing and he goes out and he gets to 300 feet like he normally does, and he still feels like he's got more in him. What does he do? Stop at 300 feet? No, he keeps going. He goes to 320, 325, and he pushes it. And he keeps seeing where is his max that particular day. But again, he's listening to his arm, and that's what is going to dictate everything else that happens that particular day. You just need to instill in that player that the understanding of that, and that you need to let them know that you're trusting them to give you an honest evaluation of where they're at that particular day, so that you can manage that to the best of your capabilities. Okay, on days that he's feeling a little tender or tired, he should throw a 50-50 bullpen and then do everything normally as he can at a defensive position except throw. So what do I mean by this? Well, if you've read the book Bullpen Secrets, then you'll be familiar with the 50-50 bullpen. This is by far one of the most effective bullpens that I've ever seen, and it doesn't really matter at any point what level or what effort level or sharpness that a pitcher is feeling. They can perform a 50-50, and they can do that every day. But that ensures that we're still getting our throwing in off the mound. Now, if he's the shortstop, then what his job is that whatever else his role is in practice that day, he does everything that he's expected to do, right up until the point where it would be time to actually throw the baseball, and then he doesn't. Or he does it severely backed off on the effort if he's not feeling, if he's feeling a little tender or tired. So if he's the outfielder, then he can sit there and he can run in and he can catch fly balls, and he can come in and catch, ground balls and come in through, and he can, and he can come up and act like he's going to throw and then stop. And then he can just kind of toss it in. Or if he is the shortstop, he can sit there and turn the double play. He can take the ground ball. He can take the relay throw. He can do all that stuff right up until it's time to throw, and then he just doesn't. And what that does is that's going to ensure that he's still getting quality practice and reps in all of the aspects of the movements of the defensive position he's playing, except for the throw. If he's your catcher, first of all, I highly would recommend that you find another position for him than catching. I can't think of a worse combination, especially for the little youth guys, where they catch and pitch, because usually those are the guys that have stronger arms. And a lot of times I hear stories of where they'll catch the first 5 innings and then they'll pitch the last 2. This is just opening themselves up for a whole lot of arm problems. But even so, if the guy was also a catcher and he pitched, again, he can do everything. He can catch and do all that stuff. And if he's throwing it back to the pitcher, he can just kind of toss it back to him easily, or have somebody next to him to be able to flip it to, so that they can throw it back to the pitcher. But it doesn't need to keep them from getting all of their defensive work in that they need to. And that's the main point I want to make there. All right, listen. He is expected to go through the same recovery protocols as all the other pitchers at the end of every day. So if you've implemented everything that you're supposed to do for your pitching staff in terms of post-throwing that day, or whatever it is from a functional movement activities and their band work and all the protocols and routines that they go through. A dual pitcher player is still expected to go through that as well. And I'm bringing that up because there's so many times where I'll see the guy who's a pitcher only or predominantly a pitcher. He's got that routine as a pitcher, and so he'll do that. But a lot of times the dual guy will sit there and he'll use after practice to go hit some more, or he'll, hang around and do more, defensive stuff and whatnot. Or he'll just be done with practice and he'll just leave like everybody else. His arm it's even more vital in a sense that he takes care of and manages his arm than anybody else because of the additional demands that are being placed on his particular arm. So the post throwing recovery protocols on a daily basis are non-negotiable. They're absolute. You've got to do them. You've got to get them in, and you've got to do them with some effort. You can't just half-ass it and feel like that you're just doing what coach wants you to do instead of understanding the importance of doing it for yourself. And then finally, if he has an extended outing in a game, he must go through the daily recovery protocol. So what does that mean? Well, again, going back to the pitching staff rotation management chart, you know that you've got your day after, your bullpens, your day befores, third day afters, all that. If a dual player, even if he's normally a starter for you, it doesn't matter. But if he's a reliever and he comes in and he throws an extended number of pitches. And for me, it's not absolute, but that rule of thumb for me was always about 40 pitches. When that pitcher, no matter what their role was, when they hit about 40 pitches in one particular outing, that was kind of the trigger for me, or the bar that they would cross over into. But if they throw more than 40 pitches, then the following day they're on a day after routine, which may mean that they don't really throw that much at all. They may just play some catch and whatnot, but they're on a full recovery day after routine. So anything that, even if the guy was just a pitcher only, what he goes through on a day after is going to be similar to what that dual player is going to go through on the day after as well. The whole point is that we're wanting to try to get the body back to 100% as quickly as we can, and we've got to do that. And typically about that 40 pitch mark is where we're going to start to cross over that threshold where a dual player would need to go through that whole thing. If he just comes in and throws an inning, maybe he throws 10 pitches, 15, then the following day he may just need to just carry on as normal. He doesn't have to go through the extended recovery period unless he feels like it's necessary, and he needs to. But that's where you just take it by a case-by-case basis, and it comes down to communicating with your guy. So anyways, I hope that this has been more enlightening as to how to manage the dual player. This is something that, like I said in the beginning, that I know most teams have it at the younger levels, prior to college. So you deal with it all the time. If you've got a team that doesn't have a lot of kids on, you got a smaller roster, and so pretty much everybody pitches and plays a position, and that's fine. How do you get your pitching done early? You can do it into groups, where you take a group of 4 or 5 or so, and they do it first while everybody else is doing something else. Or you can, you can manage it. You can do 50-50s, do them in the bullpens, do them on the game mound all at the same time. You can sit there and possibly even do some flat ground work. You can get something in that's not going to take a ton of time before it interferes with the rest of practice that you've got to do. But the most important thing as a coach is that you've got to plan that in ahead of time. So you've got to know that ahead of time that they need, who needs to do what and what it is that they need to do. And then all of a sudden you just communicate that with your players. If you've got other coaches on your staff, you communicate that with them. And then who's ever in charge of making sure that gets done is gets it done. And then they just rely as well for the pitchers to take some ownership in it and get it done themselves too. And that's where it really starts to get special. So anyways, that is how you manage the dual player. And I hope that this has been helpful to you. And I'll see you in another video sometime.